we start to explore an underrated weapon, the Hanbo.
This is the Kitsune clan, a group of sword enthusiasts who like cosplay, reenactment, and historical martial arts. If you have similar interests, feel welcomed.
Among the many Japanese weapons, the Hanbo is somehow an underrated one, in my opinion. Not too many styles deal with it, and I think this is in fact not warranted. The Hanbo is a short stick, whatever short means. We will have to have a video about what short and long means at a certain point. Usually it refers to a stick that is about 3 feet long, so between 90 centimeters and a meter, somewhere about that. The origin of the Hanbo is usually referred to as coming from a broken pole arm. Pole arms were very important in Japanese culture, so yari, naginata, whatever, any of these weapons. And if they would break in a duel or in any type of fight, you would be left with half of a stick, Hanbo, half of a stick, and then you would need to make sense out of that. In addition, the Hanbo is a good proxy for a lot of things, in fact. Basically, if you take it into your hands as similar to a sword, it can proxy a sword. It can also proxy a sword that is still in the saya, within the scabbard. It can also proxy a scabbard to a certain degree. So a lot of other weapons can be used in similar ways to the Hanbo. With the sword, it's also extremely obvious. If we take the sword in half sword, then we are immediately reminded of the Hanbo. For cross-referencing to other styles, of course, in the Filipino martial arts like Eskrima, Kali, and Arnis, we have usually shorter sticks, but also here some styles practice so-called lagomano, and lagomano would use a stick in a similar length to the Hanbo. Also, a lot of the African stick fighting methods or also the Irish stick fighting methods use sticks that have a similar length to the Hanbo, so could borrow and cross-transfer certain principles. And finally, if we think of self-defense, of course, a walking cane or even an umbrella, this is the length of a Hanbo. So therefore, a lot of people should be in fact interested in this type of stick fighting. And we will be looking at the Hanbo from a systematic perspective. We already indicated in a lot of videos that we are interested in teaching of martial arts and principle and systematics of martial arts. And the Hanbo is an interesting one because we can basically derive the style entirely from zero just by looking at the principal mechanics of the stick. And that's what we will try in a series of videos, and we will start today with that. If we take the Hanbo simply in our hands, we will usually grip it in a way that we have about 1/4 left and right to our hands and about 2/4 in the middle of our hands. What we can in principle do in this position is, if we get attacked or if we get something approaching our head, we can lift the Hanbo, and if something comes down to our legs, we can lower the Hanbo. These are two natural movements that we would do with this type of stick if we are just standing around. And these movements already have an application. For example, if we are standing there with the Hanbo and our wrists get grabbed by an attacker, by an opponent, then we can simply use moving up and moving down in a certain way to free our wrists. So it's probably not a wise decision to use something like that for blocking an attack with a weapon, but already these simple motions have a meaning if it comes to application. As a next step, we can simply further explore how we could use an upward movement and a downward movement for further defense, for defending ourselves, and we can recognize that we can optimize the force, which means the withstanding of an attack, by simply making a step forward, therefore simply turning our hip to a certain degree and bringing the Hanbo in a position so that the full body power, so the orientation of the hip, points in this direction, and this will be an oblique position, and we can already foresee that this will lead to 4 types of positions. If you have seen some of our other videos, you will immediately recognize these are the same positions as with the sword when we are doing half sword. So basically with this we come to a protection of the 4 major angles, and they form basically a diamond shaped protection net get around the body, and that's all we need for starting. So we can simply train these aspects, an attacker with a stick for easy entrance here with an Eskrima Kalianis stick, FMA stick, and assume one of the 4 positions depending on the angle of attack, and then simply strike with the nearest protruding end of the Hanbo to end the situation. And for those who have already seen the principal mechanics of the sword with half sword, you can already predict what will come next. We can combine the positions that we have just learned, simply taking in an attack at first, but not fully absorbing the incoming energy, instead redirecting it by making a change step and moving the Hanbo to the next position. By this, for example, if somebody is attacking with a baseball bat or a likewise heavy weapon, we can redirect part of the force that is incoming without having to absorb all of that. The change step is here very important, especially for the lower attacks. With the upper attacks, we could also simply make a step forward with the wrong foot, so to say, redirecting the attack directly. But for the lower ones, it's important to bring the legs out of the way, not to get hit by while redirecting the force, and therefore a change step is absolutely essential. So far, none of these movements should be surprising in any way. These are the most simple ways of using any type of weapon for deflecting incoming attacks or for defending against incoming attacks. But you can already see even these simple moves don't come out of nowhere. They are directly a result of taking a stick into your hand and simply optimizing the forces. So this is the style that has been around for thousands of years and therefore we are doing it like that. We have a simple explanation why you would use the stick in this way, because it comes very natural at first and also it optimizes the forces and the protection. That's what we are interested in. I will have a video on optimization in the next weeks where I also will talk about this problem, because I think there's a misconception about optimization in martial arts at certain points. Here it's about optimizing at first steps the forces that we use and the attacker brings onto us, and about the protection that we feel secure and protected. From these simple motions we will be able to derive more complex striking and further grappling related methods and techniques in some future videos. I hope the Hanbo is something that interests you as a viewer. I think it's a very versatile weapon. Also, if you are, for example, a fan of some of the traditional schools like the Bujinkan, I think the Hanbo is in fact one of the central weapons of the Bujinkan. There has been recent discussions about the lineage when it comes down to Takamatsu sensei, and there was the definite point that he was very versatile in the Kuki-Shin-Ryu, so in Bujinkan it's a Kuki-Shinden-Ryu, and that this is probably a central aspect of his teaching, and I think therefore also the Hanbo is very important to understand this specific martial arts. But as pointed out, the Hanbo-JiTsu, the art of wielding the Hanbo, should be interesting in fact for a wide audience, and it's strange to me that it is not considered so often. This is more of an introduction and an outlook. Hope we could inspire you, and see you around next time.